Hello. I've been out in my shop rummaging through all the scrap wood and spindles, and I came up with a really cute DIY. Should have been super simple, but the blonde side of my brain had a challenge. Stay tuned and you'll see how I fixed it. These are the pieces that we're going to use today to make an adorable plant caddy. I cut these pieces in the shop on my saw, and now I'm going to use my jigsaw to cut the end pieces of this plant caddy. I'm just going to cut an angle to the top. This wood is kind of hard, so it was a little difficult. I just pushed on, used my muscles, and got this cut. I cut two pieces exactly the same and sanded them down using my little orbital sander, and I clamped it down to this little table, and I rounded the edges just a little bit with the sander, and I'm going to show you here how I rounded it so they weren't quite so square. It just gives it a nice little look. And then this was some of that scrap wood from the swing set. I am still using some of that wood, and this is kind of where it went bad. Now I took some of these different stains. They're not really stains. It's waxes and glazes. And these are from DIY. I get all my DIY products from Sammy over at unicorndustdesigns.com. You can get your stuff there too. She ships super fast. So I decided to see what the clear wax would look like on this wood, and it looked good. Then I decided to put some dark wax over it, and I really liked that color. And see, I liked it. But then I used the dark and decrepit, I don't know if it's a wax or a stain. I don't really remember what it's called, but I decided I liked it best. So I took it on a cloth. I used my chippy brush. I tried a lot of different methods to do this, and I just kept using different methods until I got them all quote unquote stained. It gave it a beautiful stained look. I wiped it on with the chippy brush. I rubbed it with this little old piece of a t-shirt. I dipped the t-shirt in. I rubbed it on. I rubbed it off. I wiped it in. I just kept working it till I got it to have the look that I wanted. I think it turned out to be a beautiful color. Then I took my little sanding block and wrapped some sandpaper around it and just sanded the edges a little bit and just ran the sandpaper over it a little bit. I didn't want it too heavily distressed, but I did want it to have a little bit of distressed look to it. Then I glued the pieces together. I used a little bit of the super glue wood glue that I get at Dollar Tree, a little bit of hot glue to hold it quickly. I glued them all together. I used my staple gun for extra security, and I did that to all the pieces. So far, so good, right? Okay, just wait for it. And then I did add a little bit of glue to give it extra security. Okay, I did that all the way down. I don't think that I kept all of that footage in here. There you go. Now I'm going to use faded burlap and this beautiful spindle. I'm going to, I don't think it's a barley twist, but it's similar to one, the spindle, what the spindle is called. I'd gotten a little table, and this had 4 legs on the table, and this was one of them. I absolutely love it. I've been saving it for just the right project. So I'm taking this faded burlap, and I gave this 2 coats of the faded burlap. It covered really well, just took 2 coats. I let it dry really good in between. I did use my heat gun, but I got it really good and dry before I put the second coat on, and it covered really nicely. And then I'm going to take dark wax by DIY with this wax brush, and I'm going to apply a good coat on there, making sure that I get it in all those little crevices, nooks, crannies, and then I'm going to take an old t-shirt and just buff it out. I absolutely love the color that this turned out. It is so beautiful. and just making sure that I get that in all those nooks and crannies. I wanted to show you on this twist. My paper kept moving on me. And then my table, I keep shaking the camera, so I'm sorry for that. But I just love, and you can see how that stays down in those nooks and crannies, that wax. And then you can wipe back as much of that wax as you want or leave as much on there. You can keep it dark. You can wipe off more. You can wipe off less. And some places I wiped off a little more, some places I wiped off less. Now I'm going to take Beadboard by DIY, and I'm going to give all 4 pieces of this little plant caddy 2 coats. Maybe I just did 1. I can't remember. Anyway, to get the look that I want. Now I ordered these stencils from Essential Stencil, and I'm going to just use the little flourish, and I'm going to tape that stencil down so that it doesn't move around on me. I'm going to use a little pouncer and dauber, pouncer, whatever you want to call it. And I'm using ink by Folk Art. The color is ink. It's black by Folk Art. And I'm just going to put some more tape there because I started to get it in the letters. And I dab it in the paint, and then I dab most of the paint off. You want to use very little paint on your dauber, and it's better to do 2 coats than to try to get it too thick so that you don't have any bleeding. I did have a tiny little bit of bleeding on this, but it's okay because I sanded it a little bit in the end, and it looks perfect in the end. I absolutely love how it turned out. So now I'm going to do the reveal. Here we go. Oh, look how pretty that is. I did take a little bit of that. Did I use the ink or did I use? Yeah, I think I did use the ink. And just did a little tiny bit of distressing on the edges. I didn't want a lot because then I ended up going back and sanding it a little bit. So just a little distressing. See, I sanded over that where I stenciled it on there. I didn't do it heavy, but I did a little bit. Then I take my makeup brush that I got at Dollar Tree ages ago and just dust it off, clean it off. I wiped it down really good. I did the same thing to the long end pieces that I cut. Here they are. I did the same thing to them, wiped them down good with a dry cloth, and those are my 4 pieces. I didn't get everything on camera because, yeah, I just didn't. So now I'm using clear wax, and I'm going to clear wax all 4 of these pieces to protect that paint. Because if we don't protect our DIY paint with some type of sealer, then that paint can be reactivated because it is clay-based, and it will reactivate and dissolve. So we do not want to ruin all that hard work that we just put in. So sometimes I use a brush to apply my wax. Sometimes I use my hands. Sometimes I use a cloth. Here's where it gets interesting, my friends. So I'm going to put the sides on here and hot glue, super glue, wood glue, hot glue, and I put the sides on. Now, it doesn't fit just right, but I'm not really catching a clue yet. I'm like, let me get this around here where I can see it. And this is where I realize, for some reason, I did not measure it. You see that gap? You see it? See it, friends? So I pull it apart, dry it off, take it outside. Now I'm going to attach the ends to my sides. And I started with my brad nailer. I've got it clamped down to the table. And my brad nailer fell apart. The end piece fell apart. And I did not feel like trying to fix that. My husband wasn't home to help me figure it out. So I ended up just using some little nails and nailing it together. I did not get that on camera, sorry. So I cut these to the right size, had to take them all apart, cut them to the right size, restained them with that same thing and measured it out and marked it. And we're just gonna leave a little gap in between each one now. So now we're gonna glue them directly to the bottom. We're gonna put some wood glue, going to tape it down and put a clamp. I have some of these clamps I got on Amazon. They work really nice. You can clamp them down really tight. Then I left the same amount. I drew these lines on here so I'd have the same amount of little gap in between each little wood plank. And because it does, the bottom does not necessarily need to be completely solid, so it almost looks like a little palette. So it's fine. I'm totally happy with it. So I do that all the way down. That's a little bit crooked, but I'm okay with it because it's rustic. So I'm showing you that I'm going to do that all the way down. And here it is finished and dry the next day. Now we're going to attach this spindle. Look how beautiful that is. Oh, if you don't think that's beautiful, I'm sorry. I just love it. So I'm going to apply the Tite Bond, quick and tight and quick, that anyway. And it fits in there pretty snug, but I'm going to take those nails, those finishing nails, and go ahead and put one on each end to secure it. And here is our final product. I took some clay pots from Walmart and put some artificial flowers in. I intend to put some herbs in there and just have it sit out on my porch. Let me know what you think about this. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned from my mistakes to measure many times before you cut. At least my measurements were too long and not too short. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and hit that subscribe, and please leave me a comment. It really helps my channel. But most of all, remember to be still and know that He is God.